you, Charles. Right, well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the last Cabinet meeting of 2020, both those that are participating and those who are watching at home on the live stream. If members have technical difficulties during the meeting, please contact the Democratic Services Officer on call, who will attempt to assist you. On call today is Katie Brewer, and her number is 577046. It will also be at the top of the chat thread for members if you need it. For those of you who are watching via the Council's YouTube stream, please follow the instructions below the video if there are any issues with the live feed. I would ask participants, when you are not speaking, please mute your microphone. This minimises background noise and will help everyone in listening to the proceedings. Microphones must only be on if the participant has been granted permission to speak. To gain my permission to speak, please very briefly indicate on the chat to the right side of the screen, and I'll make a note and get back to you once the person speaking is finished. Please note that we will be following the usual Cabinet protocols in which other members of the Council usually only speak once on each item. Would everyone present please ensure their mobile phones are turned to silent and they're not used to make or receive phone calls while the meeting's in progress. Please also refrain from checking emails or conducting other business, and ensure that you're in a quiet room free from distractions for the duration of the meeting. Please note that the meeting is being live streamed for members of the public. It will also be recorded and subsequently made available on the internet. Can I ask members of the Cabinet to confirm that they're present in the meeting when I read out their name? I'll ask for the attendance of those councillors who are participating in order to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1 separately. Councillor Alban.
Yeah, here, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Yates.
Here, Chair.
I don't know whether Councillor Whitehead has joined us yet. She was hoping to join, but she's on childcare duty. So we'll see whether she makes it or not, but she sends her apologies if she doesn't make it. And Councillor Duckworth has sent her apologies. So the following members have asked to speak under Procedure Rule 20.1. So when I say your name, can you please confirm you're present in the meeting? On item 4, I've got Councillor Garner.
I'm here, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor David Saunders.
I'm here, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Bailey.
Here, Chair.
Thank you. And then on item 5, I've got Councillor Garner again, Councillor Pugh.
Here, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Ashby. And I see we've been joined by Councillor Whitehead.
Here, Chair. Councillor Ashby.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Ashby.
Well,
Hi, Councillor Whitehead. Yeah, she's now joined us. So we're moving to the agenda. As I said, we've got apologies from Councillor Duckworth. Everybody else is here. Does anybody have any declarations of interest in respect of items of business on the agenda this evening? I'm not seeing any. Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting. Cabinet is asked to approve the summary of recommendations and decisions of the meeting held on the 19th of November. I will propose the minutes. Can I have a seconder, please?
Yeah, I'll second that, Chair.
That's seconded by Councillor Alban. Thank you. Unless I hear any objection, I will take these minutes as approved. Those are approved. So we move on to item 4, which is the Park Avenue Broadstairs petition, which is for me to introduce. So this petition was reported to the full council meeting on the 10th of September, and in accordance with the council's petition scheme, it was referred to Cabinet. The report outlines an update on the 2 matters raised by the petition about the site on Park Avenue Broadstairs. These were for the council to require the owner of the site to replant any trees covered by tree protection orders within that area following the recent heavy felling, and to reaffirm its current view that the area should remain as open space / woodland. The report provides the Cabinet with information on the Planning Department's investigation into the alleged breach of tree preservation orders on the site, which has occurred independently through delegated processes. It's quite important, particularly for members of the public, to understand that these matters are not dealt with by Cabinet. They're actually dealt with through separate processes. The responsibilities of Cabinet are set out and delegated through the council constitution and through law, and they don't include tackling planning enforcement matters and tree preservation order breaches. Nevertheless, the petition comes to Cabinet, and that's why we're able to discuss it this evening. This has resulted in a tree replacement notice being served on 12 trees considered to be protected by the orders on site, and this notice was served on the owner of the land, requiring those trees to be planted by the 31st of March 2021. The report also outlines the process of consideration of whether the site in question should be designated as open space woodland. Cabinet is asked to agree to include consideration of open space and green infrastructure in the district within the local plan review in accordance with the separate Cabinet report on the agenda this evening. And I'll call in Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Chair. Well, firstly, I'd like to thank all in planning and legal who've worked to complete this report into the felling of over 40 trees at Park Avenue and for issuing the tree replanting notice on the landowner. It's good to see the council start to take the illegal felling of trees in Thanet seriously. As I've said previously, there's a growing strength of feeling across the district, as shown by recent demonstrations at Park Avenue, Cliftonville Bowls Club and in Margate Old Town and other parts of Thanet. The wider community of Thanet feels that action needs to be taken. I hope the tree replacement order is a first step, as I believe we should be looking to take legal action against landowners who illegally fell trees covered by TPOs, especially those who have tree replanting notices served on them, which clearly indicate that the trees were indeed covered and permission should have been sought to do any work on them. If we as a council do not start taking legal action, we're signalling to others that they can do the same with impunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. I would just say that officers have considered what the most appropriate action to take in this case is in order to remedy the breach in line with the council's protocols. They've also taken external legal advice and the action taken to require the planting of the trees is considered to be the most appropriate way to remedy the breach, which is what the council needs to do, and protect the amenity of the area. I do understand the desire to see some other action, but what the planning department is charged to do here is to remedy the breach. And that is my understanding of what they've tried to do. Councillor David Saunders.
Thank you, Leader. As Ward Councillor, I would also like to recall my thanks to the officers for their diligence in assembling irrefutable evidence regarding 12, disappointingly only 12, of the 41 plus mature and semi-mature trees felled over that weekend of the 29th and 30th of February on behalf of the landowners Park Stairs Limited. I know from my own inquiries that this was not a straightforward investigation, given the difficulty of clearly identifying those individual trees still covered by TPOs, particularly following various residential developments within Park Avenue and particularly around this location since that tree register was last reviewed. So therefore, having said that and reinforcing exactly what the leader's now said, it is now to be hoped that Park Stairs Limited will comply with the tree replacement order by the 31st of March 2021 without the need for further intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. I don't think I need to add to that. And obviously, I echo the comments of members on thanking the officers for their work on this, because I know that with documents going back to 1956, a long while before Thanet District Council existed, it's been quite a challenge for them. Councillor Bailey.
Good evening. Yeah, a lot of what I was going to say has been said, but I will reiterate it because I think, I'll start off as one of the ward councillors. I just want to thank everyone involved for persevering with this and taking it seriously, because I know obviously it's been a very hard year and been a lot of pressures on everyone's time. It was very welcome news to hear that the order had been made to replant the 12 TPO trees, and that a recommendation is being put forward to consider this area and other green areas as designated open spaces in the local the local plan review. However, the Park Avenue group do feel strongly that the council should go one step further and prosecute the landowner, especially if this replanting isn't complied with. They fully understand that there needs to be a high threshold of evidence before any legal action is taken. We have discussed this. and that any costs would come from the public purse. But now the council have spent 9 months on collating all this evidence, as outlined in point 2.2 of the report. And in the long run, we feel that a successful prosecution will send out a strong message to others who may be thinking of doing the same thing, maybe saving the council time and money in similar situations going forward in the future. So, maybe a stitch in time type principle. Anyway, many thanks to the officers and staff involved in the investigation and enforcement of this matter so far. It's been very appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. And just one thing I'll add on the subject of prosecution, because I did have a discussion with this with Mr. Livingston, Planning Applications Manager, and he makes the point that a prosecution would not actually be a material consideration if a future planning application came forward on the site, whereas the council's action in requiring the replanting of the trees or the planting of new trees to replace the trees covered by the TPO would be a material consideration. So I think that's important, because I know that residents are concerned to protect the future of the site. But we understand that residents would like to see different things happening, but obviously the officers have looked at this very carefully and they have taken legal advice, and that's how they've decided to proceed. So, members, the only thing that we have to do here, I think, is to note the ongoing enforcement action and to agree to include the consideration of open space and green infrastructure within local plan review, which is the next item. So unless I hear any, do you wish to speak?
Councillor Alban.
Yeah. Councillor Alban, do come in. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I just wanted to come back to Councillor Garner and the way other members are speaking relating to this, whilst I fully support what they're saying. But I think it's very important for the public, for our residents to note that this council has always taken action against preserved trees when they've been cut down or been pollarded without any consent, and the same in the conservation areas. We've always done it. Personally, as a former council officer, I'd certainly done it myself, and I've been to court on several occasions. So I think it's very important that this one incident, large as though it is not seen as basically a one-off thing that's happened and now we're going to start taking some action. The council has always taken action, and I think that that's important. I also think it's important as well for members to understand that obviously the person who's instigated these removal of the trees has the right of appeal against this tree replacement notice, and then if he loses the appeal, then doesn't plant the trees in the specified time, the council can take direct action and plant the trees itself, and then charge the owner of the land for the planting of those trees. And I think that that's important, and I certainly support the leader's view. This is a very complicated case. I did deal with one myself previously, of which we took such a case to court and we lost because there wasn't sufficient evidence, and that cost the council a lot of costs. So for me, the way this has been handled has been spot on, and totally support. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Alban, and as always, we benefit from your lengthy experience of these matters as a council officer. So, unless I hear any objection, I'm going to take the recommendations as approved. Thank you. And we move on to item 5, which is the local plan review and update and local development scheme, which is me as well. So every local planning authority has to prepare and maintain a work programme for its local plan related work, known as the Local Development Scheme. This is a requirement under the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004. In January 2019, the Secretary of State issued a direction to this council in relation to the local plan. Part of the direction was to amend the council's local development scheme to provide for the completion of a review of the local plan within 6 months of its adoption. This was also a recommendation by the local plan inspectors. The local plan was adopted by the council on the 9th of July 2020, which means that the review should be completed by January 2021 with a new LDS published. The review, to be clear, is the process of assessing whether a local plan needs to be updated, and if so, what the scope of that update would be. This is the assessment that has been taking place over the last few months. And once that decision is made, which is the report being considered by Cabinet tonight, the substantive work of updating the local plan can begin. This includes the whole process from evidence gathering and engagement and consultation right through to the examination and adoption of a new plan. During the last few months, a Cabinet advisory group, including members from all political groups, has been considering the scope of the local plan update and identifying local issues that need to be addressed in the update of the plan. The report before us also considers other elements of local planning policy and whether they need to be updated. And the key elements of the local development scheme, the local plan work programme, are set out in this report. This work will enable the council to deal with some planning issues that could not be addressed at the previous examination, for example, Manston Airport, Gypsy and Traveller sites, and reflect changes in government policy in relation to climate change and the council's own declaration of a climate emergency, and to consider a range of important local issues. And I just want to make clear, because I know there's been some confusion on this point, that the work will include considering the outcome of the process going on around Manston Airport. But at the moment, there is no outcome, as far as we understand it. But because of the timescale over which this work will take place, we expect there to be an outcome by the time we have to bring forward the proposals for consultation and examination. So we're not proceeding on the basis of anything that we've heard. That will actually take place on the basis of what happens, what unfolds over the coming months. So I move the recommendation in the report. Is there a seconder?
I'm happy to second.
Seconded by Councillor Yates. And we will hear from Councillor Garner, please.
Well, thank you, Leader. As you know, I've been part of the local plan Cabinet Advisory Group, and I think there are a number of good recommendations which I look forward to being included in the updated local plan. I just wanted to highlight a couple of these and also seek assurance that the local plan is updated as soon as possible with all of the recommendations. Firstly, linking into the previous item on the agenda, you'll know that at the September council meeting, when discussing the tree felling at Park Avenue, we unanimously agreed to designate the area where the trees were felled as an open space to help prevent the possibility of any future development there, bearing in mind what was said about the tree replanting notices. I think that alongside the enforcement action already taken, it's important that this is considered and implemented as soon as possible. The other item I'd just like to highlight is number 17 on the list, which is to consider the evidence for possible policy relating to hot food takeaways in relation to local public health impacts. There are a number of studies that have found a link between the overconcentration of and proximity of fast food outlets and the rise in obesity, especially among children. And we also know that the increase in obesity levels raises the risk of other health issues, including type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and now coronavirus. Policy SP38 in the new plan seeks to improve the health of Thanet's residents and reduce health inequalities. And I believe we need an amendment to complement this, which would in practice prevent any new hot food takeaways being able to open within 400 metres of a local school. We know a number of other local authorities have been able to do this, and I think it's important for us to be seen as taking this issue seriously, as well as actually taking it seriously. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Garner. And I think that all those matters are going to be addressed. I think we're going to have a further working group to provide input during the actual consideration of policy changes, and we'll be able to have an opportunity to underline our commitment to the things you said there. I think, as you know, we can't tonight, and as part of what we're doing here tonight, make any specific allocation of in respect of a particular site. All we can do is reaffirm our commitment to consider open spaces and green infrastructure in the district within the review. And I know that some members of the public would like us to make a particular recommendation. That's not the role of Cabinet. It's not the role of tonight's meeting, but it is something that members can take forward during the process to follow. And as for doing things as quickly as possible, well, there is a timetable set out in the report, and obviously changes to the local plan have to go through a formal process. There has to be engagement, there has to be inspection, and there has to be adoption. So that's the process, and that's the timetable that we're bringing forward tonight. Councillor Pugh.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, two quick questions from me. I think you've already addressed my question about Manston Airport, but I think I have a supplementary to that anyway. But firstly, as it mentions in the report, the local plan is now being used, local plan review is being used to look for a temporary site for travellers. My question is, considering the amount of distress that the previous proposals caused residents and the ongoing costs that this council has to incur for traveller incursions and removing waste and everything like that, what are the timescales for this? Particularly, how long is it going to take? And as you said, the local plan review is going to be quite a long process. And I don't really think it's particularly fair for residents to have to endure any more distress than necessary. But also as well, is it a priority within the local plan review with how quickly it will be resolved and will have a site that is safe for travellers and also as well doesn't cause distress to residents? My second question, you mentioned about Manston Airport and that, of course, the local plan review, as it is designed to do, is there to adapt to changes. And we're all aware of the current differences with the DCO process for Manston Airport, but also as well, how much of a priority is that? And two, if a change in designation does happen to Manston Airport due to the outcome of the DCO and everything else, how will that impact on the housing allocations across the district? And I'm thinking mainly not only just for my own ward, but of course Birchton and Westgate, where additional housing numbers and allocations were added on as Manston Airport was taken out of the suitable, suggested sites for the local plan a couple of years ago.
Thank you, Councillor Pugh. In respect of the traveller sites, I think one of the things that we wanted to do, and one of the reasons why we put this back into the review process in terms of the temporary site allocation, which, as you know, was the subject of some controversy in areas that were suggested for that, is in order to have a proper engagement, a proper consultation, and a proper inspection. So I do think it is, is vital that we do these things certainly in a timely way. But we have a timetable for adoption of the changes to the local plan, as I said earlier in the document, and it will be managed within that timetable. Obviously, there will be consideration of what appropriate sites are, and that will emerge and be discussed during the process. And again, members will have an opportunity to input on that. But I can't promise you that the changes are going to take place faster than the adoption of the new version of the local plan, because clearly they're not in terms of how they're adopted. I'll let Mr. Verrill perhaps comment on that, and if he wants to say anything about housing numbers. I know it's very difficult to go backwards in planning terms. But perhaps he'll come in and explain about that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Now that those sites have been allocated through the local plan and the plan's been found sound and adopted, it's actually quite difficult to row back from that. There is a good chance that we may have to find additional housing sites through the local plan review and update. So there's not really any option to go back and remove sites. Just on the Egyptian traveller sites, yes, I mean, we will be looking at the sites. The intention is to have a call for sites early in the new year and then to carry out site assessments. And obviously the local plan update group will have direct input into that process. Yes, I don't think that was the 2 points that were raised, but happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Verrill. And I'll call in Councillor Ashby.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah. I'm wondering if it's known what percentage of the 17,140 housing provision is planned to be built or has been built on agricultural land. which is leading me on to the matter of the use of the so-called mutant algorithm, which no doubt totally overestimated our district's requirement and failed to realise our shortage of brownfield sites, is now being heavily criticised by the South East MPs. How will we make provision within the plan to facilitate the possible shift of government policy to leave farmland for growing crops? Thank you.
Well, I'll let Mr. Verrill speak about the proportions. Obviously, one of the issues with a plan is a plan, and we can't specifically control which sites come forward first and are developed first. In terms of the mutant algorithm, my understanding is that it doesn't make a great deal of difference in Thanet. So whilst I hear what you're saying about the large clamour among South East MPs, I think because of the price of land, or the value of land in Thanet in particular, probably, we weren't seeing a significant change in our housing numbers based on that calculation. But I'll let Mr. Verrill, who's far greater technical grasp of these matters than me, expand on that.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, what's called the standard method, and as you're right, has been referred to as the mutant algorithm. They had an original standard method, which includes a calculation based on population and household growth and affordability. That was changed, or was proposed to be changed, and I think it was that there was a lot of objection to. The government have announced just yesterday, I think it was, that they are going to revert to the original standard method, but to provide some uplift in the larger urban areas and cities. So the idea would be that a greater proportion would be in the bigger cities in the country. That doesn't make an awful lot of difference in terms of the numbers as far as we're concerned. The numbers in Thanet in relation to the proposed second method went slightly down, and they've gone slightly back up to where they were before. So as the leader says, the actual impact on the numbers in Thanet is quite small. In relation to the portion of brownfield, we did a calculation back in 2018, which I think suggested that the level of brownfield land was about 40% with the new sites that were added when the airport was removed from the local plan. But I can check that figure and come back to you, Councillor Ashby, if that would help. But I think the figure we came to was approximately 40%. It's slightly, it is a rough figure because we rely on some windfall sites, which generally tend to be brownfield sites, but are not always so. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Mr. Verrill. So any members wish to speak on this item? No? Okay, so unless I hear any objection, I'll take the recommendations as approved. Thank you. That concludes the business for tonight's meeting. I declare the meeting closed at, I make it 17:59. Thank everybody for their time, members and officers. Wish everybody a Merry Christmas if I don't see you in the next week. And thanks to everyone who's participated. The live stream of this meeting will now end.